Chapter 271 to 275. The timing of Yumi's earth jutsu was impeccable and it trapped Hirako in a muddy river just an instant before Tsukihai's fire jutsu was about to hit him. Hirako chuckled in disdain at the pathetic attempt of the two ladies. He immediately stretched out his hand towards the huge fireball coming towards him. Dark release, inhaling maw. Following Hirako's action, the huge fireball coming towards him was immediately sucked into his hand in a spiraling whirl. Hirako did exactly the same with the earth flow river below his feet and absorbed the chakra. With the suction of chakra, the earth flow river lost its effects, making Hirako free. After regaining his movement, Hirako said with a chuckle, "Both of you have a very delicious chakra." Tsukihai thought to herself, he really can freely use all the Kekii Genkai he has absorbed, and Dark Release make most of the ordinary ninjutsu useless against him. Killing him without the use of Susanoo would be very difficult. Unfortunately, I can't reveal my Susanoo here, else it would put both this clone and Shinichi in a danger. Yumi's face also had a thoughtful look. Yumi, or Orochimaru, is a type of shinobi who is an expert in almost all forms of combat, be that taijutsu or kenjutsu, ninjutsu or fuinjutsu, kenjutsu or juinjutsu, so although her combat effectiveness is not that restricted, she still doesn't have a very good way of dealing with Hirako without giving off her true identity, and she would obviously not do something foolish like revealing her true identity in front of entire Akatsuki. As such, the methods she can use to deal with Hirako are quite limited. Moreover, Hirako is almost immune to most of the ninjutsu as well as physical warfare type attacks courtesy to the 5 Kekii Genkai he has selected. As such, even with her experience, Yumi doesn't have a very good way to fight Hirako. Thinking so, Yumi turned to look at Uchiha Tsukihai. She has been paying close attention to Tsukihai throughout the battle, and she was highly surprised to find that similar to her, Tsukihai has also been calm and collected from beginning to end. Which is unexpected according to her. In Yumi's opinion, she, a Sannin, with experience of thousands of battles, deep knowledge of many kenjutsu, along with various means to be able to make it out alive even in the worst case scenario, is calm in the face of a monster like Hirako is understandable. But Tsukihai, a 17 or 18-year-old kunoichi with just 3 Tomo Sharingan, facing a monster like Hirako, who can literally use 5 different types of Kekii Genkai to deal with all kinds of situations, is still calm and not afraid is not a simple matter. Even Yumi, Orochimaru, the temporary teammate of Tsukihai, can't help but respect such mental fortitude, but sigh at the same time. The Uchiha clan's arrogance doesn't put anyone in their eyes. Crackling. Zzzzzzzzzzzzz. At this moment, Hirako waved his hand. The storm clouds that were covered the top of the mountain suddenly sent outbursts of electric discharge. As lightning started to rage the mountain, Hirako, who was shrouded in lightning, spoke, "That's the end of the warm-up, now let's get serious and take this fight up a notch." And immediately Hirako disappeared from his position. With the movement of Hirako, the lightning also raged all over the platform, and for a moment it seemed as if the entire ritual platform became a pool of dazzling blue lightning. Wherever it fell, the rock pieces vaporized. Tsukihai with her Sharingan noticed Hirako's running trajectory, and without any hesitation, she drew out her katana and threw it along the predicted trajectory. Whyish! The katana flew out and went towards Hirako. Although Hirako managed to avoid the katana, all the lightning covering him hit the katana's metallic blade, which is a conductor. Tsukihai did not waste that opportunity and immediately shot out several kunai. The ends of kunai were tied with thin metal wire, and with the assistance of her Sharingan, Tsukihai shot the kunai in such a direction, which greatly limited Hirako's movements because of the metal wire. But Tsukihai did not stop there and subsequently shot kunai tied with large strings of explosive tags. The targets were Hirako's eyes, throat, both axilla, then, ribs, Achilles heel of the body. All the kunai were shot in the blink of an eye, and with such precise actions that even the Akatsuki members were all amazed. Even Hirako was caught off guard for a moment as his body was entangled by the metal wires. Just when Hirako was about to get rid of the metal wires that restricted his movements, he suddenly noticed the next set of kunai tied with a series of explosive tags also wrapping around him. And from the sound made by explosive tags, they were about to explode any movement. Steel release, impervious armor. With Hirako's angry shout, his body hardened and darkened. Break! Break! With his solidified body, Hirako easily broke free of the metal wires that bound him. But before he can celebrate, 2 rubbery pale white arms suddenly stretched out of nowhere and bound Hirako. And because the 2 arms were rubbery, which means they could stretch and shrink like rubber, so even if Hirako tried to break free of them, he was unable to. Boom! 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 Boom. At this time, the explosive tags also exploded, which led to a series of violent explosions that shook the entire mountain, covering the entire platform in fire dust and smoke. Yumi immediately retracted her arms, then printed the hand seals to cast a simple wind-style jutsu to blow away the cover of dust and smoke. And just as the cover of dust and smoke cleared, the figure of Hiroko, who was the center of the explosion, was immediately revealed. From the first look, Hiroko doesn't seem to have suffered any injury. But Hiroko's face was gloomy. He stood at his position for a few seconds while Tsukihei and Yumi took deep breaths. The atmosphere was extremely quiet, but both the kunoichi knew that this was just a silence before the storm. And as the drop of sweat that slid down her face dropped on the floor, Hiroko's figure disappeared and instantly appeared in front of Yumi. Yumi, who was already prepared for the coming attack, was about to leap back, but just for an instant before she could do so, the eyes of Yumi and Hiroko crossed, and immediately Yumi stopped dead in her position, her head bent down as if she was unconscious. Genjutsu. Tsukihei was startled, and only then did she notice the scarlet pupils with 3 black tomo spinning in Shinichi's eyes. Yumi's, Orochimaru's, biggest weakness is genjutsu. Even in the original story, Orochimaru suffered because of the Sharingan's genjutsu, but at that time his opponent was Uchiha Itachi, who had Manjikyu Sharingan. And who Uchiha Itachi is must not be forgotten. So even if Orochimaru was subdued by Itachi, it cannot be said that Orochimaru's genjutsu resistance is so poor that he would be affected so easily. And the fact that the genjutsu cast by Hiroko can affect Orochimaru must mean that the pair of Sharingan in his eye sockets is unusually strong. Although not to the level of Manjikyu Sharingan, the ocular power is still very high. Is it possible that the Sharingan in his eye sockets has evolved to Manjikyu Sharingan? Tsukihei temporarily had this thought, and her attention was again on the pattern in Hiroko's eyes. However, this thought was soon dispelled as the pattern of Sharingan in Hiroko's eyes was that of a simple Sharingan, that is the 3 tomo state. Tsukihei thought, no, he does not have the Manjikyu Sharingan. With Hiroko's character, if he had Manjikyu Sharingan, he would have definitely shown it out in the open without any concealment by now. Hiroko wouldn't be as cautious as Tsukihei. As such, Tsukihei can conclude without a doubt that Hiroko does not have the Manjikyu Sharingan. But it's surprising that even with just a base Sharingan, Hiroko is able to put Orochimaru in genjutsu. This was surprising. After all, who is Yumi? A sannin. Even if genjutsu is her weakness, it wouldn't be to the point that amateurs such as Hiroko, who have just gotten a pair of Sharingan, will be able to affect. Yet it's happening here. How come his visual prowess is so high? Doubts were flooding Tsukihei's mind. Despite the many doubts in her heart, Tsukihei knew that now was not the time to delve into them, so putting away her thoughts, she brought out shuriken from her sleeves and threw them towards Hiroko. Whyish! 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 Accompanied by the sharp sound of cutting through the wind, each spinning shuriken gleaming with cold light went towards Hiroko at different speeds and angles. Hiroko with his Sharingan was obviously able to see the trajectories of the incoming shuriken. The corners of his lips arched, he did not even feel the need to rely on swift release, his body swayed from one position to another, and he managed to dodge each of the shuriken with minimal movements. Is that the best you can do? Hiroko said in a mocking tone. Ding! Ding! But before he can be too happy, Hiroko heard the sound of a metal collision coming from behind him. The spectators were able to see that the shuriken thrown by Uchiha Tsukihei collided with each other after they went past Hiroko. After multiple collisions, from one shuriken to another, the trajectories of the shurikens changed, 2 shurikens shot backward, while a third one accelerated in the direction of Yumi, who was under the effect of genjutsu. As soon as he realized that something was wrong, Hiroko turned his head and noticed the 2 shuriken coming towards him. But the kinetic energy of the 2 shuriken coming towards him was obviously decreased because of the multiple collision, as such speed was slower, and because Hiroko could use steel release, he did not panic, and as soon as his arms darkened, he immediately raised his hands and caught the 2 shuriken between his finger. After successfully catching the 2 shurikens, Hiroko turned and shot both of them towards Tsukihei. How about you try to dodge these? Tsukihei smiled and threw 2 more shuriken. One of the shurikens thrown by Tsukihei collided with one of the incoming shurikens thrown by Hiroko. The other shuriken thrown by Tsukihei missed the shuriken thrown by Hiroko by an inch, and went towards Hiroko, while the shuriken thrown by Hiroko was coming towards Tsukihei. Hiroko chuckled and raised his arm to catch the incoming shuriken. While Tsukihei seemed to have a look of horror, as it was already too late to block the incoming shuriken. Hiroko knew that his attack succeeded, and he was feeling excited. But just as the shuriken thrown by Hiroko touched Tsukihei, Tsukihei's body exploded into a cloud of white smoke, while the shuriken that was coming towards Hiroko turned into Tsukihei. Hiroko's face changed immediately. He instantly activated the swift release and was about to flicker away, when suddenly the ground under Hiroko's feet turned into a swamp, effectively restricting his movements. At the same time, a pair of bandages trapped Hiroko's hand, restricting his hand movements. Hiroko struggled to break free, and he actually did, but the moment he broke free of the bandages was the exact moment when Tsukihei pierced her kunai in the chest of Hiroko. The kunai plunged into Hiroko's chest, and effectively cut through the muscles, but just at the moment when it was about to puncture the heart, a loud metal clashing sound echoed. Undoubtedly Hiroko managed to use steel release to surround his heart in a protective covering and instantly kicked the bitch in the stomach, sending her flying away. Boom. The moment Hiroko kicked the bitch in the stomach, her body exploded, creating another loud explosion that shook the mountain. Cough. Cough. Soon the dust and smoke cleared to reveal a damaged-up mountain top. Hiroko's figure stood in the middle with a pretty beat-up state, blood dripping from the corners of his mouth, and clothes burned to cinders. Cough. Cough. Next, Yumi's figure was revealed, with a line of blood dripping along her thighs from the point where a shuriken pierced her. But there was no figure of Tsukihei. Just when everyone wondered where she is, the katana lying on the ground turned into Tsukihei. Wiping away the blood from the corners of his mouth, Hiroko observed everything. Looking at the wound on Yumi's thighs, and all the things that happened in the few last seconds, Hiroko understood what happened. Realizing that he was played by Uchiha Tsukihei, Hiroko roared in anger, "Damn it, you. A very similar feeling sprouted in the heart of Yumi, Orochimaru. The fact that she was put in a genjutsu by someone like Hiroko was unacceptable, and touching the wound on her thigh, looking at the red blood, Yumi felt more terrible. What's more unacceptable was for her, a Sannin, to be saved a mere young kunoichi, even if she is from the Uchiha clan. A sense of shame that was never felt before grew in her heart. Sharingan, was what Yumi muttered as she looked at Hiroko's eyes and then at Tsukihei's eyes, and this is the moment when the obsession gained to Sharingan took birth. Alright, that's enough already. Just as Hiroko was about to continue his attack, Tendo Pain's indifferent voice came. Hiroko was not done. How can he not return the shame he suffered by being played around by Uchiha Tsukihei? And he retorted to Pain's command, "I will finish them soon enough." Tendo Pain glared at Hiroko, and his tone became colder. "Don't make me repeat myself. I have seen your performance more than enough. There is no need to continue anymore. It is only wasting everyone's time." To be honest, Pain was a little disappointed with the performance shown by Hiroko, even after successfully completing the ritual. Pain can see that Hiroko's strength has greatly improved, but the fact that Hiroko couldn't even hold his own against two young kunoichi greatly disappointed him. Sasori added with a lightly mocking tone, "It appears that Pain expected too much from you." The other members of Akatsuki either sneered, showed disdain, or were disappointed. Although the performance of the two kunoichi was indeed a bit unexpected, Hiroko was still too pathetic in their opinion. Hiroko wanted to retort, but understanding that what Pain said was indeed true, he really was unable to suppress both of them, so he didn't know what to say anymore. Seeing the disdain and contempt directed towards him, Hiroko felt unprecedentedly aggrieved. Different from aggrieved Hiroko, who stood at the center of the platform. Tsukihei had a thoughtful expression as she was wondering the cause of the increase in visual prowess of the Sharingan that Hiroko has in his eye sockets. Because the plan she is working on is based on Hiroko's chimera technique, therefore, Tsukihei was able to conduct an in-depth analysis of the Kekkai Genkai absorption ritual that took place here not long ago. In Tsukihei's opinion, if done correctly, and perfectly, chimera technique is an incredibly wonderful technique that is capable of turning coal into a diamond. But the chimera technique used by Hiroko was imperfect, at least, from her standards. First and foremost, Hiroko did not select Kekkai Genkai based on their nature chakra elements. He selected Kekkai Genkai that he believed were most useful to make a perfect ninja. But even if we analyze the Kekkai Genkai he selected, there is storm release with lightning and water chakra nature, steel release with earth release chakra, swift release with wind chakra nature, and Uchiha clan with fire chakra nature. Because of his narrow vision, Hiroko did not even consider the 5 basic chakra nature at the time of detailing and laying out the ritual, much less the yin and yang chakra nature. Yin and yang are the most critical chakra nature to reach perfect fusion. Because of his ignorance, Hiroko ignored what's more important, and no matter how much he trains or masters the Kekkai Genkai, Hiroko would never be able to reach the level of Kekkai Mora. But at the same time, Hiroko can't help but think of a good coincidence. And the 5 people that Hiroko obtained as targets Uchiha Hiragi also had the Sharingan. As such, Hirako managed to obtain Yin Chakra, and the swift release user happened to have a part Uzumaki descent, so Hirako managed to obtain some amount of Yang Chakra. As such, overall, Hirako did obtain the all 7 chakra nature, but because of the difference in their strength and potency, a perfect balance has not been achieved. But at the same time, because there are all the chakra natures, so they have complemented each other, which not only made it possible for Hirako to survive but also improved the 5 Kekii Genkai he has, and for the very same reason, the visual prowess of the Sharingan he obtained increased. Tsukihai thought, will the Kekii Genkai absorption ritual conducted by Hirako be considered a success or a failure? From Tsukihai's standards, this ritual is indeed a failure, yet Hirako managed to survive, at the same time managed to absorb the 5 Kekii Genkai. Whatever may be the reason for the imperfectness, from the very beginning, Hirako's goal was to absorb the 5 Kekii Genkai, which he managed to complete. As such, the ritual was indeed be considered a success from Hirako's standards. After again sorting out her thought, Tsukihai took one last look at Hirako and Yumi, then left the platform. After the fight just now, Tsukihai understands that Hirako's base strength has become very strong. Once Hirako completes the adaptation period, masters the use of the 5 Kekii Genkai in conjunction with each other and gains battle experience, he will become truly monstrous, and defeating him in a one-to-one fight will become close to impossible for most of the people in the shinobi world. Even within Akatsuki, his strength would be among the top 5 individuals, which is a big thing considering the kind of people that are part of Akatsuki. Seeing that Tsukihai successfully completed the battle, Shinichi just nodded to Tsukihai, and with the ritual completed, there was no longer any need to stay at this mountain anymore. Even the members of Akatsuki rarely gather together. With the objective complete, they separated in different directions and started leaving the mountain towards the directions where their next commissions point at. But before leaving, the members of Akatsuki carefully examined Uchiha Tsukihai and Oto Yumi. Even Tendo Pain, the frontal leader of Akatsuki, was no exception to this. The performance of Uchiha Tsukihai and Oto Yumi in the previous battle against Hirako made them shine quite a lot. While everyone was observing Uchiha Tsukihai and Oto Yumi, who was following Shino, also finally glanced at Uchiha Tsukihai with undisguised greed hidden in her eyes. Shinichi said with a sullen face, "Be careful on the way, that woman seems to be eyeing you." Tsukihai nodded, then said, "Kuroto-sama needs Hirako's chimera technique, you better start thinking about how you can obtain it and send it to him." Shinichi sighed, "But I don't have any deep friendship with Hirako, in fact, I find him to be very disgusting." Tsukihai smirked, "You don't necessarily have to go to Hirako, his partner Shino is also there. I am willing to bet that Shino must have obtained chimera technique." Even before joining Akatsuki, Shino, who has been traveling across shinobi world, has stolen countless techniques from many shinobi villages and individuals, in the hopes of reviving the land of sky, and ruling the entire shinobi world. So how can he, who dreams of ruling over the entire shinobi world, ignore such useful techniques like the chimera technique? Even Orochimaru dared to promise Kuroto chimera technique in exchange for an equivalent thing, so how will he obtain chimera technique now that he has left Akatsuki? Shino is his source of obtaining the chimera technique. Shinichi spoke helplessly, "But I have no deep friendship with Shino either." Tsukihai sighed, "It would just be a deal, why is there any need for friendship?" After a pause, Tsukihai continued, "You directly ask Shino what does he wants in exchange for giving you the scroll recording the chimera technique, and see if you can fulfill it. If you can fulfill, then good, but if you can't, then inform Kuroto-sama, he will naturally try to find a way." Shinichi considered a little and then nodded, "Alright, I will see what I can do." Tsukihai nodded. At this time, Shinichi asked, "Hirako's chimera technique can be used to absorb others' Kekii Genkai, I wonder what Kuroto wants to do with it. He is already so strong with those dojutsu of his, and he is still after such a disgusting technique. If only you knew just how deep this accursed shinobi world is." Tsukihai thought inwardly, and said, "You don't need to worry over such things. Besides, because of your 15 years of servitude, you have to complete anything that Kuroto-sama says, so get to it." Shinichi was surprised when Tsukihai spoke 15 years of servitude, and he can't help but look at Tsukihai with a deep look. "Just who are you, Uchiha Tsukihai?" Tsukihai smirked, "You will find out soon enough." Shinichi considered Tsukihai's words, then suddenly looked at Tsukihai with a frowned expression and spoke, "Uchiha Tsukihai, talking to you, why do I feel like I am talking to Hyuga Kuroto? He isn't teaching you any weird things, right?" Tsukihai blushed, "Don't be stupid. Seeing your reaction, my doubts are only deepened." Shinichi said with a smirk. Tsukihai's face darkened, "I am too lazy to entertain you, I am leaving, make sure to be more alert from now on, okay, bye." After leaving that sentence, Tsukihai's directly ran forward. Shinichi shouted from behind, "Hey, if you are after him, then I suggest you give up, you don't really have a chance, or should I say that your competitor is at a great advantage." Tsukihai's feet suddenly slipped and she fell to the ground as soon as she heard Shinichi's words, "This GUI." Shinichi smirked looking at the glare he was getting, "Hey, I was just kidding. But all things aside, are you sure you don't need me to escort you? If you somehow die halfway, it's none of my business." Tsukihai cursed, "Who needs your escort, you bastard?" "Ha ha ha ha," Shinichi's laughter echoed, "Are you sure?" Tsukihai sighed, she no longer paid attention to Shinichi's idiocy and disappeared using the body flicker technique. With Tsukihai gone, Shinichi also disappeared using the body flicker technique and arrived next to Biwa Juzo, who was patiently sitting on a cliff. Juzo questioned, "Are you done?" Shinichi nodded. Juzo said, "In that case, let's go, we already have our next assignment ready." Shinichi nodded, and both of them moved to hunt down their next target. On Uchiha Tsukihai's side. After moving all the way from Land of Earth to Land of Grass, Tsukihai was finally at the border of the Land of Fire and Land of Grass. Tsukihai obviously did not drop her vigilance. While passing through a forest, Tsukihai suddenly stopped and said with a sigh, "You know, I have been wondering for a while now, but how long are you going to follow me?" At this moment, the figure of Oto Yumi came out from behind another tree, and spoke with a giggle, Era, Uchiha-san is unexpectedly sharp." "Well, whatever, it works best for me I guess." Kuroto muttered. The failure of being able to create an acceptable clone with his standards has taught Kuroto that he is still not sufficiently knowledgeable. So, at this moment, Kuroto is in dire need of the latest technology and research related to cell fusion, and this is something that only Orochimaru can give him. But Kuroto also knows that he doesn't have anything worth exchanging that Kuroto doesn't mind giving away. After all, most things that would interest Orochimaru as exchange are either related to his own secrets or the secrets of Amatsukami, which are not what Kuroto is willing to exchange. So, what Kuroto can offer in exchange is the information that Orochimaru wants in exchange for obtaining the research theories, experimental results, and related material. And selling this information would also be most cost-effective. And now that Orochimaru has expressed his need for information on Uchiha Tsukihai, so Kuroto obviously plans to exploit this need to his advantage. After the cleansing operation organized by the village, Kuroto is sure that not many of the spies left by Orochimaru are at a high level to provide him with the information on Uchiha Tsukihai. So, no matter how much Orochimaru tries to search and investigate for information on Uchiha Tsukihai, there is nothing he would be able to obtain from any of his other sources. As such, if Orochimaru wants to investigate Uchiha Tsukihai as soon as possible, Kuroto, who is a high-level member of the Umbu Black Ops, is his only option. And if he is really adamant about obtaining information about Uchiha Tsukihai, then he must agree to Kuroto's side of the deal. As such, after again reading the content on the scroll sent by Orochimaru, Kuroto took out another scroll and wrote, "I understand Orochimaru-sama, I will try my hardest to investigate all the information on this Uchiha Tsukihai, but I have my own condition. I want all your research, theories, speculations, results, etc. on cell fusion." And after writing this message, Kuroto put the scroll inside the mouth of the one-eyed viper and sent him away. With that out of the way, Kuroto put away the unnecessary thoughts and focused on summarizing what he learned from observing Hiriko's Kekiai Genkai absorption ritual. First and foremost, Hiriko's reckless approach is an obvious no-no for Kuroto. Hiriko's finally success, according to Kuroto, has a very big fluke factor to it, which is not something Kuroto is willing to bet on. Second, for the ritual to go perfect, the chakra of the five nature should be in perfect balance, and yin and yang nature should be used for guiding the entire ritual. Only in this way a perfect balance and harmony will be achieved and the ritual would be successful. Third and most important of all, the core, that is the main body, should be in an optimum state throughout the ritual. This point has also been ignored by Hiriko during his ritual. He dared to directly swallow the other five ninjas, which is not exactly wrong, but the problem is that his forced approach caused the core, which is his own body, to continuously disintegrate, repair, and reorganize. As a result, greatly weakened his core, as there would be countless tears within the core, leaving many hidden dangers buried inside him waiting to be unleashed in the future. Precisely why Kuroto dared to assert Shinichi that there would be many dangers hiding within Hiriko's body. After summarizing the lessons, Kuroto also thought of the celestial phenomenon that Hiriko used. One of the many reasons why Hiriko managed to complete his ritual was the celestial phenomenon of solar eclipse and the appearance of aurora. This also gave Kuroto the idea to put some of his attention on several other phenomenons that can play a passive role in the ritual and ultimately help him in his plans, of course, celestial phenomenons being one of them. After all, the fruit of the god tree that Otsutsuki Kagaya ate also contained the energy of the planet, so the power of nature, that is the natural energy, will also play a deep role in the final ritual. Lastly, there was the matter of some kind of Iryo ninjutsu, which Kuroto cares about very much. It was clearly evident that Hirako shouldn't have survived that ritual, yet he did. Surviving such a level of cellular degradation shouldn't have been possible even with the help of Leech. As such, Kuroto speculates that it was all thanks to some king of Iryo ninjutsu, which seems to be the most reasonable explanation. As for how Hirako managed to learn Iryo ninjutsu, there are two possible sources. First is obviously Shino. With his deep knowledge of medical science and Iryo ninjutsu, it is likely that Shino taught Hirako some kind of technique that helped Hirako survive the final disintegration. The second source could be Senju Tsunade herself. Is it possible that Hirako learned Iryo ninjutsu from Senju Tsunade before he chose to defect? Kuroto thought, as he can't be sure about it. Hirako did have a very good friendship with the three Sannin, as such, it wouldn't be surprising if Senju Tsunade taught Hirako a thing or two about Iryo ninjutsu. Well, regardless of all that, one thing I can conclude is that learning Iryo ninjutsu seems indispensable to ensure the foolproof success of the ritual, and I guess I should see if I learn it because it is always best to have multiple options. Ryumyaku does heal me, but you never know when Iryo ninjutsu will come in handy. After a pause, Kuroto continued, it's just that after Senju Tsunade left, the development of Iryo ninjutsu has basically stagnated in Konoha. Most of the techniques and that are used currently were developed during the Second Great Shinobi War. Will these backward techniques really come in handy? In the shinobi world, technological advances generally fall into a stagnated growth period unless there is a genius to promote their advancement. And in the case of Iryo ninjutsu, Senju Tsunade is an unmatched genius who could have played the role of developing Iryo ninjutsu, but she left Konohagakure, therefore, there wasn't much development. This is the reason why the entire Konohagakure was helpless, unable to treat Kakashi and Rock Lee, and needed Senju Tsunade to treat them. As soon as Senju Tsunade returned, things changed. But I don't know how long will it take for her to return this time. Aside from Naruto's Talk no Jutsu, I am not even sure if anything would convince her to come back. Maybe Izanami. But I don't even know how to use Izanami. Moreover, I am obviously not going to sacrifice an eternal Manjikyu Sharingan just to bring her back. Such a dilemma. Sighing slightly, Kuroto checked over everything and left the secret laboratory. Carefully walking through the forest, Kuroto looked at the scenery around. At this time, beautiful snowflakes were falling, covering the entire forest in a soft cover of snow, and seeing this scene, Kuroto can't help but sigh slightly. How long has it been since he has witnessed this scene? Remembering some of his past experience, Kuroto muttered, another year has passed away. Yumi observed Tsukihei with an aggressive gaze, the corner of her lips arched as she muttered to herself, perfect body proportions, extraordinary beauty, and temperament, coupled with excellent chakra, with an energetic and lively breath, and the most important of all, a fascinating pair of Sharingan. It's a pity that she doesn't have Manjikyu Sharingan, but it does not matter, I will make do with her for now. It seems that this time my luck is pretty good. From her words, Yumi doesn't seem to be looking at a person, but more like a piece of art, a carefully carved out piece of art with very high value. Tsukihei sighed, she didn't know what to feel about being praised for her beauty by Orochimaru of all, and it didn't really make it much better when the opposite was looking at her like she is a helpless prey only waiting to be slaughtered. Tsukihei's face turned cold and she said mockingly, I am rather embarrassed by being praised by you. But I guess I should appreciate it nonetheless. All things aside, you have followed me all the way here, you don't expect me to believe that it was only to admire my beauty, right? Yumi ignored Tsukihei's cold words and said while licking her lips as her gaze fixed on Tsukihei's onyx eyes, although I don't want to admit it, Uchiha bloodline is really fascinating. That gaze of Orochimaru confirmed that he was really eyeing this clone body. Orochimaru's obsession with Sharingan will really make him suffer more and more. But Tsukihei can't do anything about it. Even in the original story, Orochimaru repeatedly suffered in his quest to obtain Sharingan, be that at the hands of Itachi or Sasuke. Even here, he has already started to suffer in his quest to obtain Sharingan. And Tsukihei can easily conclude that perhaps his suffering here will be more than what he went through in the original story. Why? Because here Orochimaru seems to be more obsessed with Sharingan, his obsession has also birthed relatively early. Especially after losing to Hirako, a non-Uchiha who Orochimaru can step upon whenever he intended. Honestly, Kuroto can't help but feel pity for his sensei. Give up, no matter what methods you use, no matter how much planning you use, you will never be able to obtain Sharingan, it will always end up in a failure. That was all that Tsukihei could say. Her expression was indifferent, and her tone flat, as if she was stating an obvious fact. But Tsukihei's tone angered Yumi. She glared at Tsukihei and her tone savage, an ignorant girl sheltered by her clan. Now that you dared to betray, it's about time you experience the wickedness and cruelty of this accursed shinobi world. And instantly, Yumi's right hand stretched out at lightning speed. The stretched out hand turned into a poisonous snake and immediately wrapped around Tsukihei's body, tightly restricting her body. At the same time, two snakes appeared out of the ground, tightly wrapping both of Tsukihei's legs, as a result restricting all her movements. Seeing that the attack succeeded, Yumi smiled in glee, and her neck stretched out moving towards Tsukihei's neck. Uchiha Tsukihei, I will be taking over your body. Call. 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 Just as Yumi's mouth was close to Tsukihei's neck, Tsukihei's body suddenly split into hundreds of black crows, hovering in the air. The entire forest was covered with hundreds of crows. Yumi's face changed and she retracted her head and hands. The crows again gathered together in mid-air, revealing Tsukihei's upper body, three black tomo spinning in the scarlet wheel of her eyes, looking at Yumi with pity. Yumi muttered, Crow clone technique? Crow clone technique is a derived clone technique from the shadow clone technique. Compared with the shadow clone technique, crow clone technique has lesser chakra requirements and is reusable even after the clone is dispersed. This is because, in the crow clone technique, a user projects their chakra towards a dozen crows. Since it uses a medium so the chakra requirement is lesser, and even after the clone is defeated, the crows can repeatedly regather together to reform the clone. As such, this technique is not only extremely mysterious but also very useful. The reason why the crow clone technique is very rare because it requires a very complex level of coordination between the user and the summon, as well as extremely fine chakra control. So, although extremely useful, crow clone technique is also very difficult to use. While floating in mid-air, Tsukihei spoke, I have long said that your attempts will always be useless. If you do not want to suffer in the future, it would be best that you give up in Sharingan. Yumi's face was embarrassed. When did you notice? When did you use the crow clone technique? Tsukihei said, is there even a need to notice? Your greed is completely visible from your eyes. Whether me or Shinichi-sama, both of us were able to see through your intentions very clearly the moment we met, in fact, but I am curious, what made you think that you will be able to capture me if you find me alone? Do you really think that I am just some helpless little girl? Yumi was silent for a while, then said in a gloomy tone, Uchiha Tsukihei, I will remember you. Faced with this humiliating experience, Yumi will obviously retaliate sooner or later. Tsukihei didn't care about Yumi's gloomy tone, and said lightly, I am afraid that I can't promise the same. Leaving that sentence, Tsukihei's body again split into hundreds of crows, which began to disperse little by little. Yumi can only helplessly look at the dispersing crown with a bitter look. On Uchiha Tsukihei's side. After receiving the information from the crow clone, Tsukihei, who stood on the canopy of a tree, smiled slightly and immediately disappeared from her position, running all the way in the direction of Konohagakure. Tsukihei obviously knew Yumi's, or Orochimaru's, intentions, therefore, it wasn't surprising that Orochimaru was led away by a crow clone. If she chose, Tsukihei could have actually fought with Yumi, but doing so would have been dangerous and could have revealed information about her other identity or about the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, so direct confrontation was a big no-no. For that very reason, Tsukihei also did not use Genjutsu. After a few days of travel, Tsukihei finally returned to Konoha. After sneaking into the secret laboratory, the soul was transferred back to the main body, along with summing up all the gains. Watching Hiriko's Kekii Genkai absorption ritual may have been a new experience, an eye-opener. But for Kuroto it was extremely important observation data, which he would use to further lay out his plans. As such, sneaking there was not a waste of effort. Poof! While Kuroto was drawing out several of his hypotheses, the one-eyed wiper suddenly appeared on his shoulder. Kuroto raised an eyebrow at the sudden arrival of the one-eyed wiper. Taking out the scroll from the mouth of the wiper, Kuroto read the content and sighed. He really doesn't intend to give up, does he? The content of the scroll was very simple. Orochimaru wants Kuroto to help him to carefully investigate the details of an Uchiha Kunoichi going by the name of Uchiha Tsukihai. With the way the content on the scroll was written, it was clearly evident that Orochimaru is pretty eager to get his hands on Uchiha Tsukihai. But I suppose that if he gave up so easily, he won't be Orochimaru. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/kaishin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my Patreon. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips, Yamatancho, Yuki, Search 1301. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.